Can a woman in her 30s who drinks too much, smokes too much, and says everything that comes to mind find her place in the sun, hopefully with a good man in tow? Meet Bridget Jones, a 32-year-old single woman with her weirdly charming way of being and, of course, always struggling with her weight. After all, we all go downhill after our 30s, or so it seemed back in the early noughts. At her parents' New Year's party, Bridget is introduced to Mark Darcy, a childhood acquaintance and a handsome lawyer, the son of her parents' friends. Mark tries to approach her in an ineffective way and thinks Bridget is a silly and vulgar woman. Bridget, on the other hand, thinks Mark is an arrogant and rude man. Even so, Bridget's mother and Mark's mother want to find a way to bring the two together. Of course, the vibe isn't the best, but the situation gets even worse when Bridget overhears Mark complaining to his mother about her trying to set him up with a spinster, who talks too much, smokes like a chimney, drinks like a skunk and dresses like her mother. The humiliation makes Bridget's New Year's resolution to change her life. She starts keeping a diary to record her attempts to quit smoking, stop drinking, lose weight, and find the man in her life. If you don't know or don't remember this archaic technology, a diary was a relatively common thing in ancient times where people wrote down what happened to them every day. And now, back to our protagonist. Bridget works as a publicity assistant at a publishing house in London, where her main focus is fantasizing about her boss, Daniel Cleaver, who's a real knockout. Bridget and Daniel start flirting more and more at work. Even after Bridget makes a fool of herself at the company's end-of-year party, she and Daniel continue exchanging thirsty emails. At an important book launch event, Bridget meets Mark and his colleague Natasha, who is as glamorous as she is arrogant. Bridget leaves the party with Daniel and they have dinner together, despite her being very aware of Daniel's reputation as a womanizer. Daniel tells Bridget that he and Mark were friends, but because Mark slept with his fiancée, they now hate each other. Bridget and Daniel start dating. Bridget is invited to a family party, a costume party to be more precise, and takes the opportunity to turn it into a romantic weekend with Daniel. They spend the day before the party at a country inn, and discover that Mark and Natasha are also staying there. In the morning before the party, Daniel says he needs to go back to London to sort out some work and leaves Bridget to face the party alone. The only person in costume, and dressed as a Playboy bunny. Because, obviously, they gave up on the costume thing and didn't have the decency to warn the poor woman. When she returns to London and shows up at Daniel's house, she is surprised by Daniel's American colleague, Lara, naked in her apartment. Bridget cuts ties with him, lifts her head and goes looking for a new career. Yes, she is humiliated, but she never gives up. She gets a new job in television, and when Daniel begs her to continue working at the publishing house, she replies that she would rather work wiping Saddam Hussein's behinds. Little does she know that right at the beginning of her career as a television journalist, in a story at the fire department, one of the cameramen accidentally will end up taking a great close-up of Bridget's behinds, only for her to fall on top of the camera. Bridget goes to dinner with a couple of friends, and notices that she is the only person unaccompanied. It even looks like Noah's Ark for everyone to come 2 by 2. Once again, she meets Mark and Natasha. In private, he confesses to Bridget that despite her faults, he likes her just the way she is. Sometime later, he gives Bridget the chance to do an exclusive TV interview about an important justice case in which Mark is involved. This boosts the girl's career and makes her change the way she sees Mark. Bridget begins to have feelings for Mark, and when she fails miserably at trying to cook her own birthday dinner, he comes to her rescue. After a happy dinner celebration with Bridget and Mark's friends, Daniel appears, completely drunk, and temporarily attracts Bridget's undivided attention. Mark leaves at first, but then stops being a pushover and comes back to challenge Daniel, and they fight in the street, which ends with them breaking a window of a Greek restaurant. Finally, the antics of the fight end, with Bridget scolding Mark and him leaving. After a selfish and half-assed apology from Daniel, she also dumps him. Later, one fine day, when Bridget is at her parents' house, her mother casually reveals that the fight between Mark and Daniel actually happened because Daniel slept with Mark's wife and Mark caught them in the act, not the other way around. At the Ruby wedding celebration of Darcy's the same day, Bridget breaks in and confesses her feelings for Mark. But obviously Destiny wasn't going to let it go, and she discovers that he and Natasha have accepted jobs in New York, and are almost engaged, according to Mark's father. Bridget interrupts the toast with an emotionally moving speech that loses its power as she realizes that she has nothing to do in this situation. Still, her words are not in vain, and Mark finds himself touched by what Bridget said. Still, Mark travels to New York. Bridget's friends come together to console her heart, a heart that's even more broken than the Greek restaurant window from earlier, with a surprise trip to Paris. But just as they're about to leave, Mark shows up at Bridget's apartment. They are one step away from their first kiss when Bridget runs to her room to change into some sexier underwear. Meanwhile, Mark takes a peek at her diary, and obviously, if you look for it, you're gonna find it. He reads Bridget's old opinions of him, opinions that weren't very flattering, and leaves. Bridget, realizing what he has read and fearing that she has lost him again, runs after him in the snow wearing tiger print lingerie, a thin cardigan, and trainers, but is unable to find him. Discouraged, she is about to return home when he reappears. She apologizes and he presents her with a new diary to start over. They kiss on the snow-covered street, and that should be the end, but the film still has 2 sequels, which we can summarize in future videos.